Hey, how's it going, everyone? Drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from, because today we've got a story that's going to hit you right in the feels. I want you to watch closely because you won't believe how this one unfolds. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. The wedding hall glowed with fairy lights, laughter, and floral scent. Naina sat quietly in her deep red bridal dress, heart pounding in hope. Her groom was late, but her trust waited, each second stretched like eternity. Eyes turned toward the door, then toward her. Whispers began to hum across the room. The priest checked his watch. Her father looked pale, her mother silent. Naina smiled weakly, still believing. But then a call came. Her groom wasn't coming. No reason, no goodbye. Just gone. The crowd gasped. Some pitied her, some hid their grins behind fake concern. And Naina? She couldn't breathe. Tears refused to fall. Her body sat still, while her soul collapsed. She stared at the door, still expecting. A miracle. Dark skin, someone whispered. Maybe that's why. Those words burned more than abandonment. The shame wasn't hers, yet every eye made her feel like it was. Her complexion became a silent crime. She had done nothing wrong, loved deeply, trusted fully. But the world made her question her worth. People started leaving quietly, chairs scraped, plates clinked, silence grew, even sympathy felt like salt. She sat alone beneath a ceiling of dead hopes, her mehendi dark, her fate darker. What had she done to deserve this? Then came the sound. Soft, measured footsteps. A man stood near the mandap watching her. Not with pity, but something else. He wore no lavish clothes, no gifts in hand, just tears quietly lining his eyes. Their eyes met. She didn't know him. Or did she? His gaze held years of silence. He stepped closer slowly, respectfully. From his pocket, he pulled a tiny box. Inside, nothing grand, just a simple Mangal Sutra. He knelt beside her. His voice cracked before he spoke. I saw you years ago. You offered me water when I was nothing. No name, no money, no face. But you saw me. You gave. She blinked. The memory flickered. A dusty roadside. A thirsty man. She had smiled. Handed him water. That day, he said, you gave me dignity. And today, I want to give it back. I'm not rich, but I'm real. Her heart beat loud in her ears. Was this madness, or was this mercy? Relatives murmured again. Her mother whispered, What are you doing? Naina stood. She looked down at him. His hands didn't shake. His heart did. His love wasn't loud, but true. She took the Mangal Sutra in her hand, held it gently, like a second chance. Will you promise me silence and truth? She asked. He nodded with tears, not to rescue her, but to walk beside her. They stood under the broken canopy. No crowd, no music, no rituals, only two people. Rewriting destiny. Outside, the rain began to fall, washing away laughter, sorrow, and shame. But inside, a new story had begun. She wasn't a rejected bride anymore. She was a woman reborn in the eyes of a stranger who had remembered her kindness. Sometimes the ones who stay quiet love the loudest, and sometimes ruin is just the beginning of grace. When Naina was a child, her skin tone was always noticed before her smile. Relatives would sigh during family photos, asking her to stand at the edge. She never understood why love came with conditions she never created. She grew up hiding from mirrors, avoiding sunlight like it was sin. She heard things children shouldn't. She's sweet but dark, they'd say. Innocence turned into quiet guilt, and she carried that guilt into womanhood. She never wore bright colors. She thought they weren't meant for her. Even her laughter was careful. Too much joy felt undeserved, all because society taught her. Beauty had a shade. Despite it all, she loved purely. She believed kindness could rewrite perception. She believed love could see through pigment. When she met her groom, she didn't expect miracles. She was just happy someone chose her, or at least pretended to. She gave her heart, like a child gives a drawing, with hope it would be cherished, not laughed at. She dreamed of acceptance, but woke up humiliated. Still, she didn't curse him, didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't hate. She just sat there, still innocent, still gentle. Because she believed that maybe this too was her fault. That maybe she asked for too much. That maybe her dreams were bigger than her face allowed. But innocence isn't weakness, and sympathy isn't pity. It's recognition of silent pain. And she held both in her eyes that day, glowing, even in ruin. The world judged her color, but the stranger saw her courage, not the shade of her skin, but the softness of her soul. In her silence lived a storm no one noticed, and in that storm, a girl still waited to be seen, not fixed. Not rescued, just seen, for the first time. As Nina sat there, abandoned and surrounded by the judgmental gazes of the crowd, something inside her shifted. The crushing weight of rejection felt like a truth she had always known but never truly accepted. For the first time, she realized that her worth had never depended on anyone else's eyes, only on her own heart. Silent whispers about her skin, about her imperfections, had been tearing her down for years. But in that moment, she felt them fade, like old chains breaking. Her dignity didn't belong to the opinions of others. It belonged to her. The stranger's words cut through her shame like a sudden light in the dark. I came for you, not for your skin, but for the soul I saw that day. He was telling her something she had never heard. You are enough. Nina looked around at the empty chairs, the abandoned feast, and the people who had left her behind. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt free. It wasn't just about finding a new partner. It wasn't even about what had happened to her on that altar. It was about waking up to the truth that her value was never up for negotiation. She realized how many years she had spent shrinking, herself, letting others define her worth, her love, her kindness, her innocence. None of those things had anything to do with the color of her skin. She had been enough all along. She had just forgotten to see it. Nina wasn't broken because of what happened that day. She was broken because she had let society's cruelty convince her that she was less. But now, in the silence of the mandap, with the stranger's quiet, compassion she understood. True worth is never measured by skin. She stood up slowly, with the Mangal Sutra still in her hand. No longer was she a woman defined by rejection. She was a woman awakened, stronger than she had ever known. Her self-worth no longer negotiable, and in the stranger's eyes she saw a reflection of herself, not as society saw her, but as she had always been, a person of dignity, beauty, and love. A person deserving of everything. As she walked away from the ruins of her failed wedding, she realized the greatest love story was the one she began with herself. No more waiting for acceptance. No more believing she wasn't enough. She had awakened to her own power, and that was the most beautiful thing she could ever do. Nina sat in the mandap, surrounded by the echoes of silence, and yet the world around her was screaming. Her wedding dress, once a symbol of hope, now felt like a prison. Each fabric of it weighed her down, each intricate thread a reminder of the love she thought she had found and lost. The guests had all left. The noise had faded, but her heart still thundered in her chest, a storm she couldn't escape. She had waited her whole life for this moment, and now it felt like a cruel joke. Her thoughts were a blur. Fragments of broken promises, words unspoken. She thought about her parents' faces, the ones full of pride, now clouded with confusion and regret. And then there was the ache in her chest that wouldn't stop, the one that told her that she had been abandoned, not just by her groom, but by the world. The tears she had held back, afraid to show weakness, began to fall. But no one saw them. No one was there to catch them. In that moment, her pain felt invisible, like it didn't even matter. Then there was a presence. Not a loud entrance, not a grand gesture, just the softest sound of footsteps, barely heard, and there he was. The stranger, standing at the edge of the room, eyes filled with something she didn't expect. Understanding. Their gazes locked. For a moment, time stood still. The crowd, her shame, the pain, it all disappeared. In his eyes, Nina saw something she had long since stopped looking for, a sense of worth. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His gaze was enough. It said, "I see you. I understand. You are not alone." The overwhelming loneliness she had carried like a heavy weight in her chest started to dissipate. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel like a failure. The stranger walked toward her slowly, his every step filled with purpose, like he knew exactly what she needed. He knelt down in front of her, eyes locked with hers, steady and sure. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice carrying more tenderness than she thought she deserved. For a moment, Nina couldn't answer. She was too overwhelmed by the sudden kindness in his words. Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak, because she didn't have to. Her silence said everything. Then, without a word, he handed her the Mangal Sutra, his hand shaking ever so slightly. "I don't know you, but I know what kindness looks like." He paused. "And that's all that matters. Your heart. Your soul." In that instant, the pieces of her broken heart began to come together. It wasn't the perfect wedding she had imagined. It wasn't even close. But it was a moment of pure, raw connection. The pain, the shame, the doubts. They all melted away, leaving only truth. Her fingers closed around the Mangal Sutra. It wasn't just a symbol of marriage. It was a symbol of redemption. For the first time, she wasn't the dark-skinned bride who had been abandoned. She was Nina, worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of a future beyond her past. As she stood up, there was no need for applause, no need for validation. Her heart was finally in the right place, and that was enough. The crowd was gone, the room was empty, but in her chest, she carried a warmth that was more powerful than any ceremony. Nina felt the sting of every judgmental glance that passed her way, each one more piercing than the last. She could feel their eyes, cold and calculating, sizing her up like an object to be discarded. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had spent her whole life being told she wasn't enough because of the color of her skin. But something had shifted within her in that moment. A quiet fire, small but burning with intensity, started to flicker inside her chest. She was done with living in the shadows, done with hiding her truth, done with letting the world dictate her worth. As she looked around at the empty chairs, the guests who had silently judged and then left, her heart didn't break. It hardened. No more will she cower in the face of rejection. This was her life, and she would protect it with every ounce of her being. The stranger, with his quiet presence, understood this unspoken shift. He didn't pity her. He didn't look at her like she was broken. He simply offered her what no one else ever had: respect. And in return, Nina felt a protective instinct for herself awaken. For years, she had lived with the weight of shame, the shame of being different, of not meeting societal standards. But now, as she stared down at the Mangal Sutra in her hands, She realized that her difference was her power, her skin, her story, her journey. None of it was a curse. It was her armor. She looked at the stranger and for the first time saw him not as a savior, but as someone who saw her strength. He was offering something she had never dared to ask for, a chance to stand tall. And without thinking, she made a vow to herself right then. No one would ever make her feel small again. I won't let this break me, Naina thought, her voice resolute inside her mind. Her heart, once fragile and unsure, now beat with a rhythm of defiance, of determination. It didn't matter what had happened today. She wasn't a victim. She was a fighter. She stood up from the mandap, her back straight, her head held high. The stranger watched her quietly, his gaze warm with understanding, but she wasn't looking for approval anymore. She was looking at herself. Strong, undeterred, ready to face a world that had tried to break her. The wedding was over. The guests had gone, but Naina's story had only just begun. With each step she took away from the mandap, she could feel the weight of the past lifting. She had carried the burden of shame for so long, but now she was ready to put it down. Her journey was hers to control, and she would protect it with every fiber of her being. Naina was no longer the girl who had been left at the altar. She was the woman who had risen from it. And anyone who tried to tear her down would have to go through her strength first. She was determined to live life on her terms, no matter who stood in her way. As she stepped into the rain outside, the droplets falling on her face felt like a cleansing, a rebirth. This was her life, her story. And no one would ever make her feel small again. The room was still, filled with nothing but the sound of Naina's heartbeat and the soft whispers of her thoughts. The man stood before her, his presence as quiet as the storm, brewing inside her chest. She looked at him, this stranger who had stepped into her life when everything else had fallen apart, and her breath caught. "Who are you?" she whispered, unsure of whether she was speaking to herself or to him. The answer was slow to come, and in that pregnant silence her mind raced with questions. Was this some sort of cruel joke? Or was he truly someone who could help her rise from the wreckage? He took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. "I'm someone who saw you," he said quietly. "Not for your skin, not for your past, but for the strength inside you." The words hung in the air like a promise, yet still there was doubt in Naina's heart. She had been let down before. She had been told she wasn't enough, told that her dreams were too big, too wild. But now, in this stranger's eyes, she saw something different, possibility. Her world had shattered moments before. Her groom, her supposed future, had vanished without explanation. But now, in the face of this man's quiet courage, she felt the smallest flicker of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the beginning. Her heart pounded. Was she ready to trust again? Was she ready to believe in something other than the rejection she had known her whole life? Naina's hands shook as she looked at the Mangal Sutra in her palm. This symbol that had once meant betrayal now held the key to something else. She looked at him again. His eyes filled with something more than pity. They held the warmth of someone who had known loss, someone who had learned that sometimes the greatest strength is found in silence. He had no grand gestures, no promises of a perfect life, just the simplicity of seeing her. The crowd had left, but his presence spoke louder than any applause, or fanfare could have. Naina's eyes filled with tears, not out of sadness, but out of something she had never known before. Faith. "This isn't how I imagined today," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. The man nodded, his expression softening, understanding without words. And in that moment, Naina realized that the life she had been waiting for wasn't about a perfect ceremony. It wasn't about meeting expectations. It was about the courage to stand up, even when the world was telling you to fall. In the silence between them, something shifted. A promise, unspoken yet clear. No matter how many times she had been hurt, no matter how many times the world had rejected her, this moment was different. This moment was her choice. Her power. The storm inside her, the fear, the doubt. They didn't vanish, but they no longer held her. Her heart was open, not just to this man, but to herself, to the possibility of a future where she could rise above her past. She stepped forward, slowly, determined, and placed the Mangal Sutra in his hands. "I don't need a perfect story," she said, her voice steady. "I just need a real one." And in that moment, everything changed. The room, the memories, the pain, everything shifted into a new direction. The real journey Naina knew was just beginning. And it was one she was ready to walk, not alone, but with a strength she had always had inside her. The suspense, the fear, the uncertainty, this was her moment of awakening. And with every step, she knew that no one could ever break her again. Naina stood at the threshold of a new life. The room was empty now, save for her and the man, her silent rescuer, her unexpected ally. Her chest heaved with the weight of the past, yet, for the first time, she didn't feel like she was carrying a burden. She had faced rejection, judgment, and betrayal, yet the weight of those things felt like they were lifting off her shoulders. It wasn't because she was forgotten by the world, but because she was beginning to understand something deeper. She could still choose herself. Her heart beat loudly in her ears as she gazed at the stranger, his eyes filled with a softness she hadn't seen before. He wasn't trying to save her. He wasn't trying to fix her. Instead, he was offering her something she hadn't known she needed, the space to simply be. "I know this isn't what you expected." The stranger spoke quietly, breaking the silence that had hung between them. "But you don't need perfection. You need the truth. You need to decide who you are, not just in the eyes of the world, but in your own eyes." Naina's breath hitched. The truth. She had spent so many years living under the weight of others' expectations, never truly questioning whether she was enough as she was. But now, here, in the stillness of this abandoned wedding, she found herself asking, "What if I am enough?" With trembling hands, she reached for the Mangal Sutra, the symbol of a marriage that had never been completed, never fulfilled. But it no longer held the same meaning for her. This object, once a mark of rejection, now felt like a key to unlocking her future. "I've lived my whole life trying to make others see me," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. "But maybe it's time I start seeing myself." Naina's gaze shifted from the Mangal Sutra to the man in front of her. In his silence, she saw no pity, only understanding. No need to fix her, no need to justify her pain. There was only space for her to stand in her own truth. "Are you ready to let go of what they told you?" he asked, his words gentle but firm. Her eyes flickered with doubt, but deep inside, something stirred. She was terrified. The fear of walking away from the life she had always known, the life built on trying to fit into a world that never saw her, was overwhelming. But in the same breath, there was a flicker of something else. Freedom. In that moment, Naina understood that true clarity didn't come from others' acceptance. It came from accepting herself, flaws and all. Her skin wasn't a stain on her existence. It was a part of her story, a part of her strength. Her identity was not defined by what others thought of her. It was defined by the courage to stand. As they walked side by side, the world outside seemed to shift. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow on the path ahead. Naina had no clear destination in mind, no plan, but it didn't matter. For the first time in years, she felt light. She was no longer running from the shadows of her past. She was walking toward a new chapter. There was no need for grand gestures, no need for a crowd to cheer her on. The only thing that mattered was that she was here, alive, breathing, and no longer afraid to stand in her truth. The man didn't say much after that. He simply walked with her, a quiet presence beside her as they moved forward. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with understanding. Nina didn't need words anymore. She didn't need validation. She needed to live. As they walked, Naina began to let go of the walls she had built around her heart, the walls that had kept her safe, but had also kept her trapped. She allowed herself to feel everything, the ache, the fear, the joy, and she allowed herself to be vulnerable. "I'm scared," she admitted after a long silence. He looked at her, his eyes full of compassion. "I know, but you're not alone." For the first time, Nina felt a deep sense of belonging, not to anyone or anything, but to herself. It was a quiet, powerful realization that in the vastness of the world, her existence mattered. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone. She didn't need to justify her worth. She was enough, just as she was. As the days passed, Nina began to reclaim the pieces of herself she had buried. She didn't rush, she didn't push, she simply allowed herself to heal, to grow, to become. Each morning brought new challenges, but also new victories. She started going to the places she once avoided, gathering with friends, speaking up in meetings, taking walks in the sunlight. It was a slow process, but every step forward was a victory. She realized that her past didn't define her, it had only shaped her, and now it was time to shape her future. The man remained a steady presence in her life, but she didn't need him to be her savior. He was there, not to fix her, but to walk alongside her. They had found something rare, something unspoken, a bond built on respect, understanding, and mutual growth. Naina's family began to notice the change in her. Her parents, once concerned about her quiet sadness, began to see the spark in her eyes again. She wasn't the girl who had been left at the altar anymore. She was Nina, the woman who had walked through the storm and come out stronger on the other side. And one evening, as they sat together, her mother looked at her, tears in her eyes. "I'm proud of you, Nina. I'm proud of the woman you've become." For the first time in her life, Nina didn't need to hear the words. She already knew. She had become her own source of pride. Months later, Nina stood in front of a small group of friends and family. It wasn't a wedding. It wasn't a grand celebration. It was a gathering of people who had seen her journey and stood by her as she walked it. She had come to realize that love wasn't something she had to chase. It wasn't something that could be dictated by societal standards or by the people who told her who she should be. Love was something she gave herself, something she learned to nurture from within. And as she looked around at the faces of the people who mattered to her, Nina smiled, knowing she had found peace. She wasn't waiting for someone to come and save her anymore. She had saved herself. This wasn't the life she had expected. It wasn't the life she had dreamed of. But it was her life. It was real. It was full. And for the first time in years, she felt whole. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its last rays across the sky, Nina stood tall, her heart open, her soul at peace. The past no longer controlled her. She had stepped into her future with clarity, with hope, and with the understanding that the greatest love story was the one she had found with herself.